Okay, so we're looking to just add a bit more depth to our engine, and you can see, remember that I approached this by creating a much lighter silver painted rear set of cylinders that will sit behind these satin painted ones at the front, which we've also dry brushed here, which you can see. So they're kind of ready for a little bit of a wash. So I'm going to use the Humbrol black wash for this. This is enamel based, and so you just need a little bit of thinner. So all I've done is just get a little bit of enamel thinners in oil based thinners in there, and giving this a really good good shake, because it's important to make sure it is all mixed up. And then first task is to apply it, and then we can do some blending. So in with the brush, let's get a decent amount on there, and then all we do here is just touch that in over those cylinders, because the whole idea is to really make those make the wash settle down into the molded detail that's there, which is good. Excuse me, there's a couple of tractors going by. Oh no, combine harvester. Yeah, where I happen to live. Big rural community around here, so that's kind of normal for the day. Just popping this on here. So you just draw it across that ridge, those ridges. Just drawing it across the ridges mostly helps to settle it down inside. By capillary action, it just whizzes round the detail that's there. And the good news is we can do a little more silver dry brushing. We did that, remember we did that on the front row of cylinders? Well, we'll do that on this in a bit, once it's completely dry, just to really make that detail pop out. Okay, it's useful, I think, as well, just to add a little bit of this into the recesses. Just makes that a little bit more kind of oily and creates a real definition between the cylinder and the green black paint. But I'll be honest, you're not going to see much of this at all. It's really just a case of when you peer in the engine into the cowl, you'll be able to see hopefully enough detail to really make that an interesting little exercise. So that's the whole point of doing this at all, really. Okay, so there we go. That gives you an idea. Much better than just the silver painted cylinders. You know, there was nothing to those. Now that's given it depth, and then we can now dry brush it to pop it out. So, but it will be just slightly lighter, even now you can see, than the front row. And the idea is just to enable that to be visible, that second row of cylinders to be visible. The other thing you can do with the panel liner, this, I call it panel liner, the wash, the black wash, is just add some of that into this rear of the undercarriage bay. It's quite useful to just put this in and around the rib detail in there. So have a look at that. Just you can definitely put it onto the silver as well. It gives a bit of 3D depth to that. It's nice and thin, this wash, so it settles in to and around all that detail really well. Just gives a little bit more of a 3D look, I think. And in fact, it's thin enough to be able to pretty much blend it as is. But if you just add this last bit up here, There we go. So that's in there. Just thinking whether it needs much blending. Certainly doesn't need a lot. Just a little bit more in here, I think. That's better. I just want to get a little bit more depth there. Remember how that all looked before we did any painting at all? Too much, just two-dimensional. So now at least it's a bit more three-dimensional. And what this wash does, because it's enamel based, it just has that slight satin look once it's dried, which is great because that adds again a little bit more depth and interest to the whole thing. A little bit of reflection really does go kind of a long way, really, which is good. So we'll just let that to dry off. I'll leave that for a couple of hours and then we can come back and see how we go. Should you, for instance, if you wanted to imagine, let me just try something for you here just to show you. Imagine you put some of this on and you think, oh no, hang on, there's just too much, so I'm deliberately overcooking that there. What you can do is, if we just pull off that wash, remember we put some of the thinners, enamel thinners, in oil-based thinners in that little dish. We can just get plenty of that on the brush and then come back in and just blend that excess away. Just get plenty of that on here, and it just in effect dilutes what's there and just blends that all away. And it's quite a nice thing to do anyway on these flat areas. It darkens them up a little bit and also just adds that bit more depth to it all. So there we go. That's just, you can get rid of any of the excess just by blending away like that. Don't get any reaction, of course, with our acrylic paint, which is great. So it's a nice kind of win-win, really. So that's coming on quite well, I think. Okay, so see you again soon. The rear row cylinder is just showing through, and the whole thing here is that, don't forget, we're going to put this inside the cowl, which is going to darken everything up. So it doesn't matter that rear row cylinders is lighter, because it should just make everything visible, which is kind of what I wanted, really. So all I'm going to do here is just get the cowl that we painted earlier, and just trying to get this about right. I'm pretty sure it fits like that. So we'll just temporarily pop that in there. Just get an idea. Right. Okay, so that's about it. So all I've done is push that in. So notice you can hardly see that rear row cylinders at all, but you can just about see them because we painted them lighter colour. If we'd done them the satin black, like the front row, you wouldn't see them at all. So that's the kind of thinking behind that. And when we're ready, we can just assemble those parts properly. So there we go. Hope you like that, and we'll be back soon. So moving on to the tyres, the wheels, they are another good opportunity to hand paint. And I wouldn't obviously bother getting out an airbrush, especially when we're talking about things like this, the tail wheel, for instance. And then we've got the main wheels. And so on this white Wildcat, the hubs are a light grey, the tyres are a dark grey, definitely not black, dark grey. And so here's what I just did earlier. I've just painted the hubs in primer, actually, number one, grey primer, matte, which is fine, and then I've just painted the wheels in a darker grey. That's just the base colours, and then we can do some lightening up later on, a bit of a wash, and so on. So it's just to give you an idea there. And very, very easy indeed to hand paint. So the underside colour 129 in the range is what's recommended for the wheel hubs as well. But I think it's useful to add a little bit of contrast. So what I'm doing is taking the grey primer, which is slightly darker, I think, than the original colour of the hubs, just as I said, to provide a bit of contrast. Big shake of the bottle, 45 seconds, back on with the lid, make sure you keep the tops of those clean. And then all we need to do is just come in, and I'm just going to use the grey pretty much as is. It doesn't need, because it's such a small area, it doesn't need thinning really. And so all I'm going to do is just paint away, including the tyre. So this is going to be the hub colour right at the back, but also it's going to be the, but I'm going to use it as a base, like a, well, funny enough, it is a primer, so it's going to be the primer for the darker grey, which is going to come in just a bit. So just a little bit of that all the way around. Don't go mad, don't put too much paint on it. A little bit on the brush, spread it around, make it do its job, and it's kind of job done in no time at all really. So there we go. We can just leave that now to dry thoroughly, and then we can come back and paint the tyre. Okay, so back soon for that. Matte dark grey, 32 is quite good, I think, as a dark grey for this. And this is what the main tyres now look like. So just to give you a good indication of those, they look nice and solid. No need to thin this time when we hand paint this paint, because you want it to go on nice and solid, and it's just a simple flat area anyway. So that's no problem. There's no detail to preserve, which is where thinning can really help. So I've given the dark grey a really good shake. Now we're only going to be doing the tail wheel, so we need a tiny amount for this. So I'll just pop that in there like so. Clean off the top of the bottle. Something you really do need to make sure you do with these dropper bottles, just give them a really good wipe before you put the lid back on, otherwise they're just going to get, you're going to get a gradual build up of the paint, which will make them all manky and horrible. Now, okay, so a little tip here. So doing this tiny little tail wheel, for sure, it's I'm not that good at getting this perfect. There's only a very, very tiny raised lip there on the centre of that hub, that wheel hub, which you probably barely see there. So my plan is to come and just do as good a job as I can. It won't be perfect, and then I can come in later on and just touch up the grey just to really neaten up that edge, because it's important that there is a really nice, tight, neat edge there. So going to use the grey, as I said, neat. Nice small 00 brush is good, and hopefully this will be, at least you'll be able to get a rough idea here and be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, just notice there's a bit of fluff on there. I don't know where that's come from. Unless it's a rogue hair or something. Okay, it's not brilliant, but it'll do. A bit more. Just come around here again. Just try and get you back in shot. So as I said, it's not perfect by any means, but at least we can get it close and then tidy it up afterwards. It's a really unnatural angle as well to try and bring this up to the camera, but hopefully you can get the idea. And then later on we can just use a little bit of masking tape and cover up the tail wheel so it doesn't get messed up when we paint the airframe. Okay, it's really hard to paint that and to try and keep that in shot because this is a really unnatural angle for me. I wouldn't be painting on my elbows up like this, but here you go. Just having a quick look here, around there. Okay, never mind. There we go. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea, but a good opportunity for hand painting for sure. Tyres and wheels, and you can just use the paint neat for those particular tasks. Okay, back soon for more.